Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. And right now, we're going to be discussing a supporter question. And Jack, if you'll go ahead and read the question that Aaron sent us.
Okay, and I'm condensing down a little bit what he sent in. But here we go. I've got questions for Pro Wrestling Inside and Out to deal with various topics, like diving deeper into the details regarding the sale of Continental and USA Championship Wrestling to David Woods, including the networks and other investors that were interested, and how this correlated with the rise and expansion of technology, the national promotions, and super independence and fall of the territories. I know you've addressed these topics in previous episodes. However, I believe more detail would be interesting, including what was happening in the wrestling world around during this time and the technology that supported it. One of the interesting aspects of the Southeastern Continental promotion is how closely connected it was to other territories, especially Memphis, Mid-South, Georgia, and Florida. The final days of the Continental promotion were perhaps a forerunner to Paul Heyman's ECW. The Memphis connection was in full effect under the influence of Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and Paul E. Dangerously. This strengthened Continental's relationship with the AWA. In fact, Continental had pulled out of the NWA and was recognizing the AWA champion. This brought Jerry the King Lawler into Continental territory for a series of matches, even appearing at the historic Houston County Farm Center in Dothan. An incarnation of the legendary Stud Stable was even booked and competed in the infamous Super Clash against the Rock and Roll Express. Further, there were AWA wrestler promos airing on the Continental show. During this time, I enjoyed watching AWA Championship Wrestling on ESPN. This was my first real introduction to the AWA, aside from brief glimpses in the wrestling magazines and the Continental and NWA programs that I had access to. While I certainly preferred Ron Fuller's stable NWA promotion, it was fun to see so many of our Continental guys also competing in the AWA, such as Tommy Rick, Jimmy Golden, and Ron Fuller. With that in context, I'd like to discuss Ron's options available to him at the sale of Continental Championship Wrestling. It would be great to know more about the opportunities that were opening and closing for Continental during that time, and what could have been done to remain viable if Ron would have decided to hold on to his wrestling company and continue to compete. With all of this in mind, please expand on the following. Number one, a merger of Ron's CCW and Vern's AWA and or Jerry Jarrett's USWA promotions. Number two, a merger of Ron's CCW and UWF and or Jim Crockett WCW program. Number three, an attempt by Ron's CCW to take control of the NWA, preempting JCP to align with TBS. Number four, the selling of Ron's CCW Southern Division while continuing to focus on Knoxville and his USA Wrestling promotion. Number five, joining forces with Jim Cornette and possibly merging with Smoky Mountain Wrestling if Ron continued to run USA. And number six, other options and opportunities available to Ron's CCW. Looking back, knowing what you know now, would any of these options or some combination or variation of them or some other option altogether have been viable for Ron to continue as a premier competitive force in wrestling? Why
not? Where do we want to start with that? Do we want to start with what he talks about at the beginning, the regards to selling the Continental and USA Championship Wrestling to David Woods? Rodney, I'll let you start that about whether or not they had any other investors.
About any other investors coming in for USA. I remember only the Carter Berkeley group. They came in first. They actually bought it. I think they had control of it for about 2-3 weeks, maybe 4. I'm not sure. For whatever reason, that seemed like a con job. They went around trying to get the TVs before they had even, made the first payment. Somehow, Sunshine, I forgot her name, Valerie French, was somehow involved. The Carter Berkeley continued to talk about her repeatedly as being his inspiration or whatever. Maybe he was in love with her. I don't know. I know that I wanted him out of our apartment and met Dad at the front door as he came back from making an errand somewhere. And I said, this man has got to get out of our house. He is driving me crazy. I want him out. And as far as any other, if we're talking about any of the other mergers idea, it's just not possible. You've got so many egos in there. It's just not possible for them to exist together where they're trying to work with each other. It's just not possible.
And by the way, the people from Georgia, they were not going to buy Continental at the beginning. Actually, Ron West was going to go to Georgia and start a promotion in Georgia. And when he found that out, Ron said, well, would you think they would have buy Continental? And so that happened there. As far as David Woods, when that thing broke loose, Ron Fuller was ready to get out. So Dad found David Woods, and probably David Woods probably would wish he never found him, but he did.
That was one of those crooked deal. Not crooked, should I say? It was one of those not completely upfront. Buying Continental without Knoxville, you didn't have anything. At the time, it was a thing that just. Oh, by the way, you're buying Alabama. You're not buying Knoxville. It was just a surprise to everyone, including his partners, who were completely cut out of Knoxville. That's the reason that there was no talent exchange between Alabama and the Alabama division and the Knoxville. Never was a talent exchange whatsoever, and there should have been a working relationship for sure, and that would help both the Continental side and the USA side.
He talked about a forerunner to ECW. Jack, you think that was a forerunner to ECW?
I think it gave Paul an insight as to how promotions actually work at the independent level, and probably gave him the confidence of going in and taking over ECW and building that up. So I can definitely see the correlation there that he's talking about. As far as that goes,
I will tell you that Eddie Gilbert and Paul Dangerously did not they're not the ones that got the relationship with the AWA. That was happening way before they even was there. Nick Bockwinkel came in as the AWA champion while Ron Fuller still owned Continental Championship Wrestling. And what had happened is Jim Crockett decided he wanted to run Pensacola, Florida, and wanted to run the territory without Ron Fuller's talent and without his help. And he pulled the NWA. We actually the one that went and painted over the NWA side.
Right. And there was a huge heat between Flair and Ron, having to do over Ron running Knoxville, and also having to do with Ron booking him in places the world champion should never be in. Put him in Andalusia that time, and that did not go over well at all. And he had no business in Andalusia.
Oh, he was hot that night.
Yeah.
He told me, he said, why would I get booked in Andalusia, Alabama, when I could be in Greensboro, North Carolina, making $8,000? You got me in. I said, well, I'm not the one that books you here. So you'll have to talk to Ron Fuller about that. He said, well, could you hold my stuff? He said, by the way, I'm not wearing my robe out there. There's some cow poo-poo all over the place there. And I'm not, you said, you think you at least clean the cow poo-poo.
He had every reason. And there was something that happened in Mobile that he said he would never wrestle there again. And they substituted, knowing Ric Flair was not going to be there. Ron substituted that town, and both the Bullet and Ric Flair pulled a no-show that night. Killed Mobile deader than a doornail.
I will tell you that Jerry Lawler was brought in, was given a ton of money to be there. That show, and we'll talk about that show in another episode, but that show actually it did almost $9,000, almost $10,000 gate, and David Woods lost about $2. That was by the time they paid everybody, paid flights, and Austin Idol, a bunch of guys. It was a lot of money. Let's see. What else does he talk about here, Jack? Am I
talking about mergers with, like I said, with the AWA, USWA? There was suspicion with Jerry Jarrett. I'll just tell you right now. Jarrett, in every aspect, tried to undermine Continental every opportunity he had. Whether it was Lawler coming working the Birmingham Bash for Mike Jackson or running Columbus, Mississippi when he knows we were there. So there was always suspicion between Jarrett and the Fullers. I just tell you right off the bat. In fact, it got so bad that Dad was sent to Nashville to get the shows in Nashville and Memphis. Once Jarrett found out that that they were heading that way, he called Ron to have a ceasefire. So so that was never going to happen. Bill Watts did not have any respect for Ron Fuller and the way he did business. Ron sometimes, let's just say, his business practices were not on the up and up. In other words, he would substitute and just get bad. He just have a bad reputation of total substitutions. And so, and terrible shows. I mean, it got to the point where they had a cage match in Florence, Alabama, and the cage match lasted. Putting the cage up lasted longer than the match. That whole show was an hour and 20 minutes in Florence, Alabama, and it never drew again after that. So yeah. there was that between Bill Watts and Ron Fuller, and in fact, and we just discussed it on the Mid-South show, why he never mentioned that Brad was the Southeastern champion and the U.S. Junior champion. He did not want to acknowledge.
As a matter of fact, when our father Ron West was leaving to go back, and he did. He went in 1984. He went there to wrestle. Went there to referee, and he left after about 5 months after he was there. He went back to Ron Fuller, and these were the exact words that Bill Watts said. Why would you want to go back to that rinky-dinky place? Those right. His exact words. Why would you want to go back to that rinky-dinky place? All right, now.
And there was, Dad did try to talk to Watts about running a joint venture with the UWF and Continental in Atlanta, because both the top shows on Pettitino's Superstars of Wrestling was Mid-South and Continental. So they thought, Dad said a joint venture between the two. And he said, I will run Atlanta, but I will not run it with them.
Oh, by the way, Super Clash. He would have never had Vern Gagne he didn't like any of the talent that Continental had. He didn't want to use them on any of the Super Clash shows. That's a different story that we could go into that would just be a program by itself.
Yeah, that was that day that we came in. We came out our first day. Me and Dad went to the offices with David Woods, and he showed us the video. And I said, what do they want to do? Us to promote their show on here with none of our people on it? Made us look small. And I said, forget that. Go ahead.
Jack, do you think a merger could ever happen between Vern Gagne and Ron Fuller?
No.
It would never happen. No. It just wouldn't happen. And Jerry Jarrett would have always tried to
you get why that is.
Yeah.
Typically with the Birmingham, Florence, all those were typically with his territory at first, with Nick Goulas and Roy Welch. And so I would always figure that Jarrett thought that Birmingham should be his.
And Jim Crockett, to my knowledge, I remember when we said something one time to Jim Crockett Jr. We were talking about Ron Fuller, Bob Armstrong. He said, I don't want to use any of them guys. He just had no respect whatsoever for.
No. And you get it. And as far as Ron preempting Crockett with TBS, that was not going to happen. You had to show TBS you had something. Bill Watts was in a better position to go in and do this thing in Atlanta. But as far as the production and the way things were done in Continental, it just wouldn't work for Ted Turner. He just wouldn't have had it on his show.
Plus Ron Fuller would not have ever had the $1 million, I don't think, to have paid for that. Let's see what else. The seller of Ron CC Southern Division, while continuing to focus on Knoxville and USA Wrestling Promotions. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think Ron Fuller ever showed up at anywhere but TV. I don't even know if he was in Knoxville at the Coliseum. He may have been there. I was always selling stuff, so I don't know if he was there or not. Rodney, was you there?
Not that I remember.
I think they had a deal with Meliala when that $800,000 or whatever they were getting. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was some money. I don't know how much it was.
Now,
but
as far as other options for Continental, the only option really for Ron would have been to stay in business. He leaving Robert, Jimmy, Roy Lee, and Bob together. At least they had their built-in talent. In the end, what happened to Continental, happened to Mid-South, happened to Florida, happened to every one of them was the talent. Everybody wanted to go where the big money was, and that was Vince McMahon. And they sucked up all the talent. And so when you didn't have anybody to use anymore, that was the end of the line.
By the way, Jim Cornette, Ron Fuller never got along. So that would have.
I
mean, am I telling the truth?
I don't know of anybody that could have been partners with Jim Cornette.
No, I don't know.
We actually, at one time, we wanted Cornette to come and work in 1984 in Southeastern. If we would have, that would have changed that would have changed everything.
And by the way, Ron didn't want to continue in wrestling.
No.
He did not. He wanted out. He had other ventures he wanted to go into, and I think even while he was in USA, he was working on the hockey, and I think that was a thing that he wanted to do. I'm not for sure that was when he was doing it, but Ron wanted out, and there was no doubt. I don't blame him. He'd been in the business a long time. Richard Hood says Vern didn't like Southern wrestling.
Yep.
And Southern wrestling didn't care much for Vern or his style. So.
That's right. And for Ron to stay in business, it was going to cost him a major investment, even in his own company, because big markets, Birmingham and Knoxville, increasingly wanted better production for their TV every year, wanted to improve. So.
I will tell you, Ron Fuller was a very smart businessman. From 1974 until 1988 and 1987, while he was hands-on, business was spectacular. When he was hands-off, it wasn't as good. Ron Fuller was very smart in the way that he presented his wrestling while he was there. And when he was there and he was on, he made money. Now, that's the one thing. Richard Hood, yes, Jim Barnett did have a hand in Knoxville in 1980. Then he, I think, sold it to Jim Crockett, I believe.
He sold it to Ric Flair and Blackjack Mulligan.
Yeah. So, but Knoxville never was meant to do any well with Jim Barnett, I don't think, because they never sent any talent over there. All right, guys, anything we need to did we miss anything?
No, I think we got it pretty well covered.
Aaron, I hope we answered your question. If not, send them in. And if you've got any questions you want to ask,
we'll do follow-ups. That's good.
We'll do a follow-up on this if we missed something and you didn't if we didn't really answer your question. If you like this video, give us the big thumbs up. Subscribe to the page and go one step further. Hit that notification bell, and it'll tell you each and every time we upload a video. Until the next video right here on Pro Wrestling Inside and Out, so long.